confirmation for that, Katie, or will that just happen?
And it has started, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, well, thank you all very much for attending my virtual meeting of Economy and Transport and Environment Decision Day. The meeting is being webcast on YouTube via the County Council website. We have 2 papers on the agenda today, and these have really been brought forward at this time due to the conditions that we're operating under with the COVID-19. So that's why these papers are here today. I'm going to ask, I think, Andrew Wilson, I think you're going to present both reports. So if I can ask you to present agenda item 1, please. Thank you.
Certainly, yes, Councillor Humby, thanks. This agenda item deals with a bus service in the Winchester area, services 95 and 96 that operate between Winchester and Micheldever and East Stratton. The history of this is that up until the end of last year, the services were operated on a commercial basis by Mervyn's Coaches with a rather old coach, and the new legislation came into force at the beginning of this year, stating that all buses used on public transport, on local bus services, needed to be fully accessible, and because the coaches have a high entrance step, they're not accessible. So Mervyn's deregistered the commercial service, and so the County Council stepped in at the time with a short-term solution where we contracted with Stagecoach to put an interim solution in to keep that service operating while we went out to tender during February. At that point, Councillor Porter, as the local member, was very fully engaged in the process. She put forward various views about what she expected to see from the service, what she would have liked to have seen, the journey opportunities. And for that service, we would typically consider a taxi share because the numbers travelling aren't that great, and they're usually a lower cost for us to procure. So we went out to tender in February, and we received bids from bus operators. The lowest bid was in the region of £16,000. We thought that was a little bit high in terms of subsidy per passenger journey. That would have taken us over and above what we would ordinarily expect to pay. And we were disappointed that we didn't get any bids from taxi companies at the time. So we did, however, receive approval from you at your decision day on the 10th of March to spend up to 16,000, but we wanted to do some further market testing to make sure we got better value for money. So we continued with the short-term interim solution with Stagecoach. And then during that time, COVID-19 appeared, and we basically suspended all our local bus tendering because the suppliers were struggling for resources. We were fearful that the value for money that we would receive through the prices would be very poor. Costs would likely be very high because the operators would, in their modelling to price the tenders, they would be predicting low passenger numbers and therefore low revenue, and that means higher tender prices. So that was the reason that we suspended the bus tendering at the time. Mm-hmm. Because of COVID-19, any notion that we had around taxi shares, that became unviable because of social distancing. We couldn't put in a taxi share because we couldn't operate them safely with the social distancing. So we've carried on still with the interim measure. Out of interest, Councillor Porter's preferred solution is a taxi share. She sees that as a more flexible option for the people that live in her area. But for the moment, we simply cannot procure a taxi share. So what we're seeking today is to carry on with this interim arrangement with Stagecoach, providing services on it's only 2 days a week. It's a Tuesday and a Friday on this interim solution for another 12 months while the market settles down. We get a better picture in a few months of how the local bus market is operating, what the tendering prices are like, and hopefully we'll be able to go back to a cheaper option of a taxi share. So in terms of the recommendations, what we're asking you for today, Councillor Humby, is to continue with the interim arrangements for another 12 months while the market settles down. hopefully taxi share will become an option, and that you approve the authority be delegated to the director to put in the appropriate contractual arrangements to carry on with this interim arrangement for a further 12 months.
Okay, that's great, and thank you very much for that. Stuart, did you want to add anything quickly to that, or was that you okay?
No, I'm happy. I think Andrew's covered all the points. So
Yeah.
I've got nothing to add, Councillor Humby.
No, well, I completely agree and understand why we made the original decision, why we had to. That was something that was set down, and trying to make decisions in the current situation we are with COVID is very difficult. Trying to get accurate data, so it's difficult to take those decisions based on that. So completely agree with the direction that we're taking here. And presumably Councillor Porter is as well and understands those issues, and that we can make sure we inform her. So absolutely understand why we do that, hopefully, and we'll be able to make a decision based on more accurate data sooner than later, hopefully, if things hopefully do improve. So I understand why we're taking this approach. Pleased to see that we are doing this and continue to support the service and the bus companies. And we're seeing the second paper as well about that working relationship we have with them. So thank you, Andrew, for that. Can you thank also Lisa as well, if she's put some, I'm sure she prepared the report. So very happy, Katie, to accept the recommendations in the paper as set out under 2 and 3 in the paper. So thank you very much. Okay, thank you for that. We'll now move on to agenda item 2, the bus provision payment. And Andrew, I think you're presenting this report as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll run through this one as well, Councillor Humby, thank you. So this report deals with COVID-19 bus provision and our payments to bus operators during this period. The report sets out the background to the government's response to COVID-19 and the bus industry. And this report deals specifically with the local authority COVID-19 bus services support grant, or we know it now as CBSSG, COVID-19 bus service support grant. This is a fund that the DfT have put in place to replace lost revenue that bus operators are experiencing on the subsidised bus network. Fundamentally, it's a tool to keep the bus network stable, keep income coming into the bus companies, prevent operators from deregistering services and suffering financial difficulty. And hopefully at the end of all this, we will come out with, we'll still have a healthy bus market post-COVID-19. We'll still have all our operators in place, and we'll have healthy competition for our tenders. And this is one tool that's being used to make sure that the bus operators come through this in a financially viable way. This is the second tranche of CBSSG that the County Council will have received. That the first tranche covered the period from the 17th of March to the 8th of June, and we were allocated 509,000 in that tranche, and that has been that's been spent now. So today's decision is about the second tranche and covers the period from the 9th of June to the 3rd of August, and the amount that we've been allocated is 305,000. As this is quite a fast-moving situation, we've already submitted our bid, if you like, to DfT for the third tranche. That's due in on the 1st of September, and we've just submitted that, and that is for a further 8 weeks beyond the 3rd of August. So it's an ongoing process.
Yep.
In terms of the methodology that we've used to spend this money, to distribute it amongst the bus operators, it's set out at paragraph 35 in the report. But in a nutshell, the money is basically allocated to the bus operators according to the proportion of the subsidised network that they operate in Hampshire. So in general terms, if Stagecoach operate around about 50% of the subsidised network, they would be entitled to around about 50% of the CBSSG amount. So what we did with the first tranche, we set that out with the operators. We went through a consultation process with them, set out our methodology, and their feedback resulted in a few minor changes to the allocations. Some of the operators went up slightly in their allocations, some went down slightly, and that process was set out in a report to the director on the 26th of May. and that methodology was approved. As this is a new fund and the basis of the money being awarded by DfT is that it is allocated to bus operators on an open book basis, we were very keen to make sure that we were using a transparent, fair and accountable methodology. So we took it upon ourselves to appoint Southern Internal Audit to review our methodology and make sure that what we were doing was fair and transparent. One of the main points of the DfT funding is that the operators aren't permitted to make a profit out of any additional grant funding that they would receive through this process. And it's only in the last week that we've received the report from Southern Internal Audit. It's been very positive, all good, no problems, and they've seen no problems at all in our methodology, which is a good result for us, really, to make sure that to reinforce our view. So that's the CBSSG aspect. The report also deals with the payments that we're continuing to make to bus operators for concessionary fares reimbursements and our bus contract payments. And through the process, we've always followed the Cabinet Office guidance. There have been 2 policy procurement notices distributed. They were distributed in March and June, and we followed those. As a result, we've continued to pay the bus operators their concessionary fares reimbursements at 100% rate, or in other words, the pre-COVID levels, and we've continued to pay bus contracts at 100% of the rates, despite the bus operators, particularly in the early days of COVID-19, they were not required by the government to run a full service because of various issues with staff. The passenger numbers dropped off massively to around about 15% of what they would ordinarily be. And the DfT, it links to the CBSSG because the DfT allocations of the CBSSG, the 509,000 in the first tranche, 305,000 in the second tranche, are based upon the local transport authorities continuing to pay the operators at their concessionary fares reimbursement at pre-COVID levels and 100% of the bus contract rates. In terms of finance, there's no budgetary impact on the County Council from this report. CBSSG is a DfT funding source, and the concessionary fares budget and the local bus budget are already within budget. There's no additional payments being requested through this process. It's simply to carry on paying what we would have paid anyway, despite the bus operators running fewer services and carrying fewer passengers. In fact, we're nearly back to normal now in terms of the levels of timetables that the bus operators are running. We're at 90% plus, and then we're seeing additional services being run to try and cope with the school and college return within the next 2 weeks as well. So although passenger numbers are around about 50% of what they were, what they would have been ordinarily, the timetables that are running are virtually back to normal. So moving to the recommendations, we have 7 recommendations. I wasn't proposing to read all 7 out, but they cover approval of the methodology that we've used and that has subsequently been audited and come through that process okay. We're requesting authority to spend the £305,000 grant that we've received from DfT for the CBSSG. There's an additional amount of money that we have been asked by DfT to broker on their behalf for something called restart costs. That's where bus operators, in terms of getting their timetables back to normal, some of them have been mothballing vehicles and premises and so on. DfT have made allowances for bus operators to claim restart costs, and they've asked us to administer that on their behalf. We're recommending that if not all of the money is spent on the revenue shortfall of the CBSSG money, that we're seeking approval to spend money on the items that are listed in the appendix to this report, and that could be additional bus services that need to cope with demand. It can be cleaning bus shelters, and those are more within our control rather than money that we would pass on to operators. We're also requesting delegated authority to the director to approve future rounds of CBSSG, I've mentioned already that tranche 3 is already underway, and we've submitted our bid for tranche 3. And rather than come back to the executive member each time, given that this is quite a fast-moving process, it would be more efficient for the director to be able to sign on future rounds of CBSSG. And then the final 2 are that we continue to pay concessionary fares and bus contracts at 100% pre-COVID levels. And finally, that where we operate taxi shares, we continue to pay the reimbursement levels of taxi operators as we have done over the previous few months at 80% of their normal contract prices. The reason we're paying taxi operators a little bit less, at 80%, is because of the reduced fuel costs that they won't be incurring through not operating, because they only operate on demand. And when we do with the taxi shares, they don't operate if there's no passengers booked. So there's an element of reduced cost there for fuel. And those are the recommendations.
That's great. Thank you very much. A very comprehensive run through of that report. So thank you for that. And also, again, can you thank Lisa as well for her input into that report? Much appreciated. I think this is something where I think from the County Council's point of view, we were very, very quick to react in the first instance. And I know, as we all know, I meet regularly with the 3 major bus companies, and it is that working relationship, that partnership that I think that has been so successful. They were extremely pleased at the speed that we were able to react, and also like to praise all of them for the work that they have done through exceptionally difficult times for them all. They have been remarkable in the services they have been able to provide, but I think that partnership working just demonstrates that from our point of view how quickly as I say, we were able to react and work with them to provide the services that they have done. And it's been extraordinarily difficult for everybody, and certainly in terms of the work they've had to do in the social distancing and the measures they put in place, and now have the discussions that are going on with the schools going back and the work they're having to do that with that as well. So I'm very pleased to support all the recommendations as set out from 4 through to 10. But just there again, just to thank everybody that has all the speed that everybody has worked to put this together and putting in place those measures for going forward as well, so reaction. It is the very limited time we're given sometimes to prepare some of this that can make it difficult for ourselves and the operators. So I think indeed, congratulations to everybody that's helped put that together. And hopefully, Stuart, somehow we can report back to the bus companies, that how pleased we are that the services they've been able to provide, and the communications we've had with them and how easy it has been to work with them through that. Stuart, I don't know if you just want to make a brief comment on that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Humby. Yes, I absolutely, we will convey that to them, and we clearly your comments today, I'm sure, will be welcomed by the bus company, and I'm sure that can be kind of picked up and conveyed to them and to the wider public. I think it is a particularly important relationship, as you highlighted. And yes, our ability to react to changing circumstances and the support we've had from them, and the major efforts that the bus companies are now making to help ensure that the return to school and college is as successful as it possibly can be, is also very much welcomed in the same spirit, I think.
Okay, all right, that's great. Thank you for that. So, as I say, thank you to the whole team that have been able to work so quickly and putting all this together. And as I say, setting ourselves up so that we can react with the same speed and deliver those services that they continue to do so. So as I said, Katie, so I repeat myself, you're happy to support the recommendations as set out in the paper. I don't have nothing further to add, Stuart. I don't know if anybody else has, but so just very pleased that we put the papers through and we're able to continue to support where we are, and happy to draw the meeting to a close. So thank you, everybody, all very much. Thank you.